Hi everyone. Welcome back to Goodnight Stories. My name is Lyra, and I will be your guide into whatever book we decide to read tonight. From young readers to young adult novels, my hope is to give you a comfortable space to listen to a story while you work or doze. So, sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea. Tonight we jump back into Erin Hunter's Forest of Secrets, the third book in the original Warrior series. Chapter 20. Where? How many warriors? Fireheart demanded. Over there, Brackenpaw flicked his tail toward the deeper forest. I don't know how many. They're creeping through the undergrowth. Okay, Fireheart thought quickly, trying to ignore the sudden thumping of his heart. Go back to camp, warn Bluestar and Tigerclaw. We need some warriors out here right now. Yes, Fireheart. Brackenpaw spun and then raced off down the ravine. As soon as he had gone, Fireheart headed into the forest, prowling with new caution beneath the arching ferns. At first, all seemed quiet, though it wasn't long before he picked up the rank scent of many intruding cats, the scents of WindClan and ShadowClan. Somewhere ahead, a bird sounded a stuttering alarm call. Fireheart took cover behind a tree. He could still see nothing. His fur prickled with anticipation. He bunched his hindquarters and sprang, clawing his way up the trunk of the tree until he could scramble onto a low branch. Crouching there, he peered down through the leaves. The forest floor seemed empty, with not even a beetle stirring. Then Fireheart caught sight of a fern quivering. Something flashed white and was gone. Moments later, a dark head poked out of the undergrowth below the tree. Fireheart recognized Nightstar. A soft mew came from him. Follow me. The ShadowClan leader emerged from the bracken and raced across a stretch of open ground. A band of cats streamed after him. Fireheart grew even more tense when he saw how many warriors from WindClan and ShadowClan bore down on his camp together. Fireheart saw Tallstar and Cinderfur, Deadfoot and Stumpytail, Wetfoot and One Whisker, running side by side as if they were litter mates. Not long ago, these cats had been fighting each other in the snowbound WindClan camp. Now they were united in their hatred of Brokentail and a ThunderClan for sheltering him. Fireheart knew he would have to fight them, even though he thought of the WindClan warriors as his friends. He would have to stand by his leader and his own clan. As Fireheart braced himself to spring down, he heard a single furious caterwaul come from the direction of the camp and recognized Tigerclaw's voice summoning the warriors to battle. For all his distrust of the deputy, Fireheart couldn't help feeling relieved. Right now, ThunderClan needed all of Tigerclaw's fierce courage and fighting skills. Fireheart scrambled down the tree, hit the ground with all four paws, and streaked toward the battle, no longer trying to hide from the invaders. When he broke out of the trees, he saw that the open ground at the top of the ravine was covered with a mass of writhing, spitting cats. Tigerclaw and Nightstar wrestled together, clawing furiously. Darkstripe had pinned down a WindClan warrior. Mousefur flung herself, screeching in fury, on top of Cinderfur. Morningflower, a WindClan queen, raked her claws down Longtail's flank and sent him howling back down the slope. Fireheart sprang at Morningflower, anger pounding through his veins. He couldn't help remembering how he had helped this same queen carry her kit on the way back to WindClan's camp after Brokenstar had driven her out of her clan. She leapt around as Fireheart landed beside her and pulled back just as she was about to swipe him with her claws. For a few heartbeats, both cats stared at each other. Morningflower's eyes were filled with sorrow, and Fireheart could see that she too remembered what they had endured together. He could not bring himself to strike her, and after a moment she backed away from him and disappeared into the heaving mass of cats. Before he could draw breath, a cat slammed into Fireheart from behind, knocking him onto the damp ground. He scrambled vainly to get up, twisting his neck. He gazed up into the fierce eyes of a ShadowClan warrior, Stumpytail. A heartbeat later, and the ShadowClan warrior's teeth sank into his shoulder. Letting out a yowl of pain, Fireheart battered at Stumpytail's belly with his back legs, clawing out great clumps of his brown tabby fur. Stumpytail's blood spattered him as the ShadowClan warrior reared back in agony and was gone. Fireheart scrambled up and looked around, panting. The fiercest fighting had shifted to the bottom of the ravine. The enemy cats were pushing forward, clearly determined to invade the camp. The outnumbered ThunderClan warriors were unable to keep them back, and where was Bluestar? Then Fireheart saw her. With Whitestorm and Dustpelt, she crouched at the entrance to the gorse tunnel, ready to bar the way with her life. Already, One Whisker and Wetfoot had broken through Tiger Claw's defense, and as Fireheart stared horrified, Wetfoot flung himself at Bluestar. Fireheart raced along to the top of the ravine, out of the whole of the Thunder Clan. Only he and Yellowfang knew that Bluestar was on her last of her 9 lives. If she died in this battle, ThunderClan would be without a leader, or worse, would be left to the control of Tiger Claw. When he was above the tunnel entrance, Fireheart plunged straight down the slope, his paws barely touching the treacherous steep rocks, to land skidding in the thick of the fight. His teeth tore into Wetfoot's neck, dragging the warrior off Bluestar. The ThunderClan leader slashed her claws at the gray tabby Tom until he scrabbled backwards and fled. A wave of fighting cats bore down on Fireheart and the other cats by the gorse tunnel. Fireheart bit and scratched instinctively without knowing which cat he was fighting. Sharp claws slashed his forehead and blood began trickling into his eyes. He took a gasping breath, feeling as if he were about to suffocate in the rank scent of his enemies. Then he heard Bluestar meowing close to his ear. "They're pushing through the wall. Fall back. Defend the camp." Fireheart scrabbled to keep on his paws as the invaders carried the battle into the tunnel itself. The gorse tore at his fur like hostile claws. It was impossible to fight here, so he turned along his own length and struggled through the gorse into the camp. In the clearing, Willowpelt, Runningwind, and Sandstorm had rushed to guard the nursery, ready to protect the nursing queens and their kits. Longtail hastily licked his wounds, stood outside Broken-Tail's den with Brackenpaw beside him. Among the branches of the fallen tree, Fireheart could just make out the dark tabby fur and sightless eyes of the former ShadowClan leader. He couldn't help feeling a pang of frustration that they were being attacked for the sake of this cruel and murderous cat. Nightstar and One Whisker were the first to break out of the tunnel, streaking across the open ground toward Broken-Tail's den. Tallstar pushed his way through the thorny hedge and joined them. More of the invaders followed. "Stop them!" Fireheart yelled, rallying the clan warriors as he raced across the clearing. "They want Broken Tail!" He threw himself on Nightstar, rolling the Black Tom over on the dusty ground. He couldn't help wondering how many ThunderClan cats really wanted to defend the former ShadowClan leader. Many of them would no doubt be happy to hand him over to the other clans, but Fireheart also felt sure that they would stay loyal. Whatever they felt in their hearts, they would fight for ThunderClan. He pinned Nightstar down, his teeth buried in the leader's bony shoulder. Nightstar writhed under him and then heaved upwards. Fireheart lost his balance and suddenly found that he was trapped. The warrior, the old, was still ferociously strong. Nightstar bared his fangs, his eyes gleaming. All of a sudden, he reared back, letting Fireheart go, shaking blood from his eyes. Fireheart saw that Brackenpaw had leapt at the ShadowClan leader and was clinging to his back with all 4 paws. Nightstar tried vainly to shake him off and then rolled over, crushing Brackenpaw against the ground. The apprentice let out a furious howl. Fireheart slashed at Nightstar with claws outstretched, but Tallstar thrust between them, trying to reach Broken-Tail's den. To his dismay, Fireheart felt himself being forced backwards. Then Tiger Claw was there. The huge deputy was bleeding from many wounds, and his fur was plastered with mud, but his amber eye still burned with the fire of battle. He swiped a massive paw at Tallstar, bowling him over and sending him scrambling away. More ThunderClan cats appeared, Whitestorm, Mousefur, Runningwind, and Bluestar herself. The tide of battle turned. The invaders started to retreat, breaking for the tunnel and the gaps in the bracken around the clearing. Fireheart watched, panting, as One Whisker vanished at the tail end of the fleeing invaders. The battle was over. Broken-Tail stayed crouched in his den, his head low as he stared unseeing at the ground. He had made not one sound during the battle. Fireheart wondered if he even knew what his adopted clan had risked for him. Close by, Brackenpaw struggled to his paws. Fur hung raggedly from one shoulder, and his coat was smeared with dust and blood, but his eyes glowed. "Well done," Fireheart meowed. "You fought like a warrior." The apprentice's eyes shone even brighter. Meanwhile, the battered ThunderClan cats were gathered around Bluestar. All were muddy and bleeding, and they looked as exhausted as Fireheart felt. At first they were silent, their heads lowered. Fireheart could sense no triumph in their victory. "You brought this on us." It was Darkstripe who spoke angrily, confronting Bluestar. "You made us keep Broken-Tail here, and now we've been torn to pieces defending him. How long before one of us is killed for his sake?" Bluestar looked troubled. "I never thought it would be easy, Darkstripe, but we must do what we believe is right." Darkstripe spat at her with contempt. "For Broken-Tail? For a couple of mouse tails? I'd kill him myself." Several of the other warriors muted their agreement. Darkstripe, Tigerclaw shouldered his way through the assembled cats to stand beside Bluestar, who looked suddenly old and fragile beside the huge dark tabby. This is your leader you're talking to. Show some respect. For a heartbeat, Darkstripe glared at them both, then bowed his head. Tigerclaw swung his massive head, sweeping his amber gaze over all the cats. Fireheart, go and fetch Yellowfang, meowed Bluestar. Fireheart turned toward the medicine cat's den to see that she was already running stiffly across the clearing, followed closely by Cinderpaw. Quickly, the two cats began to check the warrior's wounds, searching out the ones who needed the most urgent treatment. As Fireheart waited for his turn, he saw another cat appear from the camp entrance. It was Graystripe. His fur was sleek and unmarked. A couple of pieces of fresh kill dangled from his jaws. Before Fireheart could move, Tigerclaw broke away from Cinderpaw and strode across to meet Graystripe in the middle of the clearing. "Where have you been?" he demanded. Graystripe looked bewildered. He dropped the fresh kill and meowed. "Hunting? What on earth happened here?" "What does it look like?" snarled the deputy. "WindClan and ShadowClan invaded, trying to get to Broken Tail. We needed every warrior, but it seems that you weren't here. Where were you?" "With Silverstream," Fireheart answered silently. He thanked StarClan that at least Graystripe had brought back some praise, so he had a genuine reason for being away from camp. "Well, how was I to know what was happening?" Graystripe protested to the deputy, beginning to look annoyed. "Or do I have to ask your permission before I set paw out of the camp?" Fireheart winced. Graystripe should have known better than to provoke Tigerclaw like that, but perhaps guilt was making him reckless. Tigerclaw growled low in his throat. "You're away too often for my liking, you and Fireheart." "Hang on!" Fireheart was stung into the replying. "I was here today when the cats attacked, and it's not Graystripe's fault that he wasn't." Tigerclaw let his cold gaze rest on Graystripe and then Fireheart. "Just be careful," he spat. "I've got my eye on you, both of you." He swung around and stalked back to Cinderpaw. "Like I care," Graystripe muttered, but he didn't meet Fireheart's eyes. While Graystripe went to take his prey to the pile of fresh kill, Fireheart limped back to the medicine cats to have his wounds seen to. Growled Yellowfang as she ran an expert eye over him. "If they'd pulled out much more of your fur, you'd look like an eel, but none of the wounds are deep. You'll live." Cinderpaw came up with a wad of cobweb, which she pressed to the scratch over Fireheart's eye. Gently, she touched her nose to his. "You were brave, Fireheart," she whispered. "Not really," Fireheart felt embarrassed. "We all did what we had to do." "But it's not easy," Yellowfang rasped unexpectedly. "I've fought battles in my time, and I know." "Bluestar," she went on, turning to the leader and facing her squarely. "Thank you. It means a lot to me that you'd risk your clan to protect Broken Tail." Bluestar shook her head. "There's no need for thanks, Yellowfang. It's a matter of honor. Despite what Broken Tail has done, he deserves our compassion now." The old medicine cat bowed her head softly so that only Bluestar and Fireheart could hear her. She mewed. "He has brought great danger to my adopted clan, and for that I am sorry." Bluestar moved closer to her and gave her gray coat a comforting lick. For a moment, the expression in her eyes was that of a mother soothing a fretful kit. A picture came into Fireheart's mind of the clan leader padding through the forest on the night of the gathering, and the moonlight that shone on 3 silver coats, on Bluestar, Mistyfoot, and Stonefur. Fireheart gasped. Was that really what he had seen? 3 cats so identical that they could be nothing else but kin? Mistyfoot and Stonefur were sister and brother, he knew, and Graypool had told him that they once borne the scent of ThunderClan. Was it possible that Bluestar's kits hadn't died all those moons ago? Could it be that Mistyfoot and Stonefur were the ThunderClan leader's lost kits? Chapter 21. When Cinderpaw had finished tending to Fireheart's wounds, he went to find Graystripe. His friend was hunched up inside the warrior's den, his golden eyes troubled. He looked up at Fireheart, as Fireheart slipped between the branches. "I'm sorry," he blurted out. "I know I should have been here, but I had to see Silverstream. I couldn't get near her on the night of the gathering." Fireheart sighed. For a moment, he had considered sharing his suspicions about Mistyfoot and Stonefur with his friend, but now he realized that Graystripe had more than enough worries of his own. "It's okay, Graystripe. Any of us could have been away, patrolling or hunting. If I were you, I'd stick around camp for the next few days and make sure Tiger Claw sees you. Graystripe scraped absently at a piece of moss. Fireheart guessed he had already arranged to meet Silverstream again. There's something else I wanted to tell you, he meowed, deciding not to try to argue about this now. There's something else I want to tell you, he meowed, deciding not to try to argue about this now. About Brackenpaw. Quickly he described how he and the apprentice had gone out early, and how Brackenpaw had scented the invading band of cats. He fought well, too, Fireheart remarked. I think it's time he became a warrior. Graystripe let out a purr of agreement. Does Bluestar know this? Not yet. You're Brackenpaw's mentor. You ought to recommend him. But I wasn't there. That doesn't matter, Fireheart gave his friend a nudge. Come on, let's go and talk to Bluestar now. The ThunderClan leader and the most of the warriors were still in the clearing, while Yellowfang and Cinderpaw distributed cobwebs to stop bleeding and poppy seeds for pain. Brindleface had brought out her kits to see what was going on, and Cloudkit was frisking around, pestering one warrior after another with questions about the battle. Brackenpaw was there, too, giving himself a thorough wash. Fireheart was relieved that he didn't seem too badly hurt. The two warriors went up to Bluestar, and Fireheart once more told the story of Brackenpaw's skill at scenting their enemies and his bravery in the battle. It's thanks to Brackenpaw that we had any warning at all, he meowed. We think he should be made a warrior, Graystripe added. Bluestar nodded thoughtfully. I agree. Brackenpaw showed himself worthy today. She got up, paced into the middle of her cats, and raised her voice. Let all cats old enough to catch their own prey join here beneath the high rock for a clan meeting. Goldenflower appeared at once from the nursery, followed by Speckled Tail and Small Ear, limped slowly from the elder's den. When they had gathered around Bluestar, she meowed. Brackenpaw, come here. Brackenpaw looked up, surprised, and padded nervously over to Bluestar. Fireheart could see he had not the least idea what was coming. Brackenpaw, it was you who warned the clan today, and you fought bravely in the battle. Bluestar meowed. It is time for you to become a warrior. The apprentice's mouth fell open. His eyes blazed with excitement as Bluestar pronounced the ritual words. I, Bluestar, leader of ThunderClan, call upon my warrior ancestors to look down on this apprentice. He has trained hard to understand the ways of your noble code, and I commend him to you as a warrior in his turn. She fixed her blue gaze on Brackenpaw. Brackenpaw, do you promise to uphold the warrior code and to protect and defend this clan, even at the cost of your life? Brackenpaw trembled slightly, but his voice was steady as he meowed. I do. Then, by the powers of StarClan, I give you your warrior name. Brackenpaw, from this moment, you will be known as Brackenfur. StarClan honors your forethought and your determination, and we welcome you as a full warrior of ThunderClan. When she finished speaking, Bluestar stepped up to Brackenfur and rested her muzzle on his bowed head. Brackenfur licked her shoulder respectfully, then walked over to stand between Fireheart and Graystripe. The watching cats raised their voices to chant the new warrior's name, Brackenfur, Brackenfur. They began to press around him, congratulating him and wishing him well. His mother, Frostfur, pressed her muzzle against his flank, while her dark blue eyes glowed with delight. Tonight you have to keep vigil alone. Tonight you have to keep vigil alone, mewed Sandstorm, giving Brackenfur a friendly nudge. Thanks, StarClan, the rest of us can have a night off. Brackenfur was too overwhelmed to answer properly, but he broke into a deep, contented purr. Thank you, Graystripe, he stammered, and you, Fireheart. Fireheart felt a rush of pride to see the cat made a warrior at last, almost as though Brackenfur had been his own apprentice. It made up a little for knowing that he would never go through this with Cinderpaw. StarClan had a different fate for her. Now that the ceremony was done, weariness swept over Fireheart. He was about to go back to the warrior's den when he caught sight of Cinderpaw limping rapidly over to her brother. Congratulations, Brackenfur, she mewed, her blue eyes sparkling as she covered his ears with licks. Brackenfur's purring faltered and his eyes looked troubled. You should have been with me, he murmured, gently nosing her injured leg. No, I'm fine as I am, Cinderpaw insisted. You'll have to be a warrior for both of us, and I'll have to settle for being the greatest medicine cat this forest has ever seen. Fireheart gazed at the dark gray she-cat with admiration. He knew that Cinderpaw really was happy to be Yellowfang's apprentice. She would be a fine medicine cat, but she would have been a fine warrior too. It took a special spirit, he thought, not to begrudge her brother's triumph. As always, the sight of Cinderpaw's injury reminded Fireheart of Tigerclaw. Fireheart was so sure the deputy had caused her accident and had also tried to drown him just recently. Yet today, Tigerclaw had fought with the strength of StarClan. Without him, they could have lost the battle. If you prove his treachery, Fireheart asked himself, who will defend ThunderClan then? After the raid, Fireheart was relieved to see Graystripe keeping his promise to stay around the camp, patrolling or hunting or helping Yellowfang and Cinderpaw to replenish their supplies. Tigerclaw said nothing, but Fireheart hoped he had noticed. However, on the third morning, Fireheart was woken by movement in the nest beside him, and opened his eyes in time to see Graystripe sliding out of the den. "Graystripe," he muttered, but his friend vanished without replying. Careful not to disturb Sandstorm, who was sleeping on his other side, Fireheart got up and slipped out between the branches. He emerged, blinking into the clearing, and saw Graystripe disappearing into the gorse tunnel. He also saw Darkstripe crouched beside the pile of fresh kill, looking up with a vole dangling from his jaws. His eyes were fixed on the tunnel entrance. Fireheart felt a heavy weight like a cold stone in his belly. If Darkstripe had seen Graystripe leave, that meant Tigerclaw would know about it before very long. And then the deputy would want to know exactly where Graystripe had been. He might even follow him and catch him with Silverstream. Almost unconsciously, Fireheart started forward. He forced himself to walk briskly, but without any special urgency. As he passed the heap of fresh kill, he called out, "Morning, Darkstripe. We're just off to hunt. It's the early cat that catches the prey, you know." Without waiting for Darkstripe's response, he entered the tunnel. Once he had left the clearing, he put on speed, racing to the top of the ravine. Graystripe was out of sight already, but his scent was strong, leading unwaveringly to the Sunning Rocks. But they agreed only to meet at 4 trees, he thought. Fireheart pelted along, ignoring the tempting sounds and smells of prey in the undergrowth. He had hoped to catch Graystripe and divert him before his friend reached Silverstream, just in case Tigerclaw was already out in the forest, but by the time he came within sight of the Sunning Rocks, he had seen no sign of him. Fireheart paused on the edge of the trees and drank in the scented air. Graystripe was close by, he was sure, and he could scent Silverstream as well, but the scents of both cats were overlaid with something that set Fireheart's fur bristling. The smell of blood. At that moment, he heard a thin, eerie wailing from the rocks ahead, the unmistakable sound of a cat in deep distress. "Graystripe!" he yelled. He shot forward and hurled himself up the sloping surface to the nearest rock. What he saw from the top brought him to a skidding stop. Below, in a deep gully between this rock and the next, Silverstream lay on her side. As Fireheart stared, appalled, a strong spasm traveled down the length of her body and her legs twitched. She let out another chilling wail. "Graystripe!" Fireheart gasped. Graystripe was crouched beside Silverstream, frantically licking her heaving flank. He looked up at the sound of Fireheart's voice. "Fireheart, it's the kits. The kits are coming, and it's all going wrong. Fetch Yellowfang." But Fireheart bit off his protests. His paws were already moving, carrying him down from the rock and back across the stretch of open ground toward the trees. Fireheart ran as he had never run before, but even so, a small, cold part of his mind was telling him this was the end. Every cat in the clans would find out about Graystripe and Silverstream now. What would Blue Star and Crooked Star do to them when it was all over? Almost before he knew it, he was back at camp. He hurled himself down the ravine, almost bowling Cinderpaw over the entrance to the tunnel. She reared back with a meow of protest, scattering the herbs she had gathered. "Fireheart, what? Where's Yellowfang?" Fireheart panted. "Yellowfang?" So Cinderpaw suddenly grew more serious as she sensed Fireheart's desperation. "She went over to Snake Rocks. It's the best place to find Yarrow." Fireheart gathered himself to go on running, then paused, frustrated. It would take too much time to fetch Yellowfang from Snake Rocks. Silverstream needed help now. "What's the matter?" mewed Cinderpaw. "There's a cat, Silverstream, by the Sunning Rocks. She's having her kits, but something's gone wrong." "Oh, StarClan, help her," exclaimed Cinderpaw. "I'll come. Wait there. I need to fetch supplies." She vanished into the mouth of the gorse tunnel. Fireheart waited, scrabbling his paws with impatience, until at last he saw movement in the tunnel again, but it wasn't Cinderpaw. It was Brackenfur. "Cinderpaw sent me for Yellowfang," he called as he bounded past Fireheart heading up the ravine. At last, Cinderpaw reappeared. Her jaws were clamped over a leaf-wrapped bundle of herbs. She flicked her tail at Fireheart as she approached, signaling that he should lead the way. Every step of that journey was torment for Fireheart. Cinderpaw did her best, but her damaged legs slowed her down. Time seemed to stretch out. With a pang of horror, Fireheart remembered his dream of a faceless silver queen who faded away, leaving her kits crying helplessly in the dark. Had it been Silverstream? As soon as the Sunning Rocks came in sight, Fireheart bounded ahead of Cinderpaw. When he reached the foot of the rock, he saw another cat crouched on top, looking down into the gully where Graystripe and Silverstream were. Cold paws clutched Fireheart's heart. There was no mistaking Tiger Claw's massive body and dark coat. Darkstripe must have notified him, and the deputy had followed Graystripe's scent. Fireheart had passed him on his dash back to the camp without realizing it. "Fireheart," growled Tiger Claw, turning his head as Fireheart scrambled up the rocks. "What do you know about this?" Fireheart looked down into the gully. Silverstream still lay on her side, but the powerful rippling down her body had ebbed away into weak spasms. She had stopped wailing now. Fireheart guessed she was too exhausted. Graystripe huddled close to her. He made a low, crooning noise deep in his chest, and his yellow eyes were fixed on the she-cat's face. Fireheart didn't think that either of them had realized Tiger Claw was there. Before Fireheart could answer the deputy's questions, Cinderpaw came skidding around the bottom of the rock and squeezed along the gully to Silverstream's side. She dropped the bundle of herbs and stooped to sniff the silver-gray queen. "Fireheart," she called a moment later, "get down here, I need you." Ignoring a furious hiss from Tiger Claw, Fireheart leapt down into the gully, scraping his claws painfully on the sheer rock. As his paws touched the ground, Cinderpaw came to meet him. She was carrying a very small kit with its eyes closed and ears flat to its head, and dark gray fur plastered to its body. "Is it dead?" Fireheart whispered. "No!" Cinderpaw set down the kit and patted toward him. "Lick, Fireheart. Make it warm, get its blood flowing." As soon as she had finished speaking, she turned into the narrow space and went back to Silverstream. Her body blocked Fireheart's view of what was happening, but he heard the apprentice medicine cat begin to meow reassuringly, and an anxious question from Graystripe. Fireheart bent over the kit and rasped his tongue over its tiny body. For a long time it didn't respond, and he began to think Cinderpaw had been wrong, and the kit was dead after all. Then he felt a tiny shiver run through it, and it opened its jaws in a soundless mew. "It's alive," he gasped. "Told you," Cinderpaw called him. "But keep licking. There's another one coming any moment now." "That's right, Silverstream. You're doing fine." Tiger Claw had come down from the rock and was standing in the mouth of the gully with a look of thunder on his face. "That's a River Clan cat," he hissed. "Will one of you tell me what's going on?" Before any cat had time to reply, Cinderpaw let out a shout of triumph. "You've done it, Silverstream!" Moments later, she turned with a second tiny kit in her jaws and set it down in front of Tiger Claw. "Here, lick." Tiger Claw glared at her. "I'm not a medicine cat." Cinderpaw's blue eyes blazed as she rounded on the deputy. "You've got a tongue, haven't you? Lick, you useless lump of fur. Do you want the kit to die?" Fireheart flinched, half expecting Tiger Claw to hurl himself at her and slash her open with his powerful claws. Instead, the dark tabby bowed his huge head and began to lick the second kit. At once, Cinderpaw turned back to Silverstream. Fireheart heard her meow. "You need to swallow this herb. Here, Graystripe, make her eat as much as she can. We've got to stop the bleeding." Fireheart paused for a moment in his own vigorous licking. His kit was breathing evenly now, and it seemed to be out of danger. He wished he knew what was happening in the gully ahead of him. He heard Cinderpaw growl, "Hold on, Silverstream," and a louder panicky meow from Graystripe. "Silverstream?" At the sound of his friend's distress, Fireheart could not stay back any longer. Leaving the kit, he pushed forward until he could crouch beside Cinderpaw. He was in time to see Silverstream raise her head and feebly lick Graystripe's face. "Goodbye, Graystripe," she whispered. "I love you. Take care of our kits." Then the silver tabby's body gave a massive shudder. Her head fell back, and her paws jerked, and she was still. "Silverstream?" whispered Cinderpaw. "No, Silverstream, no." Graystripe's mew was very soft. "Don't go, don't leave me." He bent over the limp body, nuzzling her gently. She did not move. "Silverstream!" Graystripe reared up and flung back his head. His wails of grief split the quiet air. Cinderpaw crouched over the body for a few moments more, nudging at Silverstream's fur, but at last she admitted defeat. She sat up and stared ahead, her blue eyes bleak and cold. Fireheart got up and padded over to her. Cinderpaw, the kits are safe, he murmured. The look she gave him made his heart freeze. But their mother is dead. I lost her, Fireheart. The rocks were still echoing to Graystripe's dreadful wailing. Tigerclaw appeared, scrambling past the other cats, and reached out a massive paw to cuff the Grey Warrior behind the ear. Stop that moaning. Graystripe fell silent, more out of shock and exhaustion. Fireheart thought, then obedience to the deputy's orders. Tigerclaw glared around at all of them. Now, will some cat tell me what's going on, Graystripe? Do you know this RiverClan cat? Graystripe looked up. His eyes had gone dull and cold, like pebbles. I loved her, he whispered. What? These are your kits? Tigerclaw seemed stunned. Mine and Silverstream's. A faint spark of defiance kindled in Graystripe. I know what you'll say, Tigerclaw. Don't bother, I don't care. He turned back to Silverstream, pressing his nose against her fur and murmuring softly to her. Meanwhile, Cinderpaw had roused herself enough to examine the two kits. I think they'll live, she mewed, though to Fireheart she sounded less certain than before. We need to get them back to camp to find a queen to suckle them. Tigerclaw spun around to face her. Are you mad? Why should ThunderClan raise them? They're half-breeds. No clan will want them. Cinderpaw ignored him. Fireheart, you take that one, she ordered. I'll carry the other. Fireheart twitched his whiskers in agreement, but before he picked up the kit, he walked over to Graystripe and pressed his body against his friend's broad gray shoulder. Do you want to come with us? Graystripe shook his head. I have to stay here and bury her, he whispered. Here, between RiverClan and ThunderClan. After this, not even her own clan will want her to mourn her. Fireheart felt his heart break for his friend, but there was nothing more he could do to help. I'll come back soon, he promised, more softly, though he was past caring if Tigerclaw heard him or not. He added, I will mourn her with you, Graystripe. She was brave, and I know you loved her. And she loved you. His friend did not respond. Fireheart picked up the kit with his teeth and left Graystripe beside the cat he had loved, more than his clan, more than honor, more than his life itself. Chapter 22. Tigerclaw went on ahead, and by the time Fireheart and Cinderpaw reached the camp with Silverstream's kits, the whole clan knew what had happened. Warriors and apprentices had gathered outside their dens, watching in silence. Fireheart could almost smell their shock and disbelief. Bluestar stood at the entrance to the nursery as if she was waiting for them. Fireheart half expected her to turn them away, refusing to take care of a different clan's kits, but she only meowed quietly. Come inside. In the heart of the bramble thicket, all was dim and quiet. Brindleface was curled around her kits, asleep in a heap of gray and tawny fur, with Cloudkit's white coat shining among them like a patch of snow. Close by her, in a nest of moss lined with downy feathers, Goldenflower lay on her side, suckling her new kits. One was a pale ginger color like Goldenflower herself, and the other a dark tabby. Goldenflower, murmured Bluestar, I have something to ask you. Can you manage 2 more? Their mother has just died. Goldenflower raised her head, her startled look softening when she saw the 2 helpless scraps of fur dangling from Fireheart's and Cinderpaw's mouths. They had begun to wriggle feebly, giving out thin, high-pitched mews of fear and hunger. I suppose, Goldenflower began. Wait, Speckletail interrupted. She had padded into the nursery just behind Fireheart. Before you agree to anything, Goldenflower, ask Bluestar to tell you whose kits these are. Fireheart felt a pang of anxiety. Though Speckletail was a good mother, she had a ferocious temper, and he guessed she would not look kindly on kits that were neither one clan nor the other. I would not hide such a thing from her, Bluestar meowed calmly. Goldenflower, these are Graystripe's kits. Their mother was Silverstream, a RiverClan cat. Goldenflower's eyes widened in astonishment, and Brindleface, roused from her doze, pricked up her ears. Graystripe must have been slinking off for moons to see her, Speckletail hissed. What loyal cat would do that? They both betrayed their clans. There's bad blood in those kits. Nonsense, Bluestar spat back, her hackles suddenly raised. Fireheart winced. He had rarely seen his leader so angry. Whatever we think about Greystripe and Silverstream, the kits are innocents. Will you take them, Goldenflower? They'll die without a mother. Goldenflower hesitated, and then let out a long breath. How can I say no? I have plenty of milk. Speckletail let out a snort of disapproval, and pointingly turned her back as Fireheart and Cinderpaw gently laid the kits in Goldenflower's nest. The pale ginger queen bent over to guide them toward her belly, and their miserable squeaking died away as they burrowed into the warmth of her body and found a place to suckle. Thank you, Goldenflower, purred Bluestar. Fireheart realized that she was looking down at the young kits with an expression of longing. He wondered if she was thinking about her own lost kits, and his doubts about what had really happened to them came flooding back. Could they possibly be Mistyfoot and Stonefur, alive and well in RiverClan? Did she have any idea? His thoughts were interrupted when Cinderpaw turned abruptly and made her way out of the den. Fireheart followed her to find her crouching outside with her head bowed onto her front paws. What's the matter? He asked. Silverstream died. Fireheart could hardly hear her muffled reply. I let her die. That's not true. Cinderpaw looked up, blinking. Her eyes were blue pools of misery. I'm supposed to be a medicine cat. I'm supposed to save lives. You saved the two kits, Fireheart reminded her, moving closer and pressing the side of his face against her cheek. But I didn't save Silverstream. A wave of sympathy washed over Fireheart. He understood how Cinderpaw felt. He wanted to tell her she was wrong to blame herself, but he didn't have the words. Feeling useless and saddened, he began to lick her gently. What's going on? Fireheart looked up to see Yellowfang standing in front of them, a puzzled frown on her broad gray face. What's this I hear about Greystripe and a RiverClan queen? Cinderpaw didn't even seem to notice that her mentor was there. It was left to Fireheart to explain. Cinderpaw was brilliant, he told the elderly medicine cat. Those kits would have died without her. Yellowfang nodded. I've seen Tigerclaw, she rasped. Brackenfur was taking me to the Sunning Rocks when we ran into him. He's furious about the kits, but he's not furious with you, Cinderpaw, she added. He knows you did your duty, just as any medicine cat would. Cinderpaw glanced up at that. I'll never be a medicine cat, she spat bitterly. I'm useless. I let Silverstream die. What? Snarled Yellowfang angrily, arching her skinny gray body. That's the most mouse-brained thing I've ever heard. Yellowfang, Fireheart began to protest at her harsh tone, but the medicine cat ignored him. You did your best, Cinderpaw, she growled. No cat can do more. But it wasn't good enough, Cinderpaw pointed out dully. If you'd been there, you would have saved her. Oh, StarClan told you that, did they? Cinderpaw, sometimes cats die, and no cat can do anything about it. She let out a rusty mew, half laughter, half scolding. Not even me. But I lost her, Yellowfang. I know, and that's a hard lesson. Now, there was rough sympathy in the old cat's meow. But I've lost cats before now. More cats than I care to count. Every medicine cat in the world has. You live with it. You go on. She nudged Cinderpaw with her battle-scarred muzzle, and went on nudging until the young cat rose unsteadily to her paws. Come on, there's work to be done. Small-Ear's complaining about his aching joints again. She herded Cinderpaw in the direction of her den, and paused to glance over her shoulder at Fireheart. Don't you worry, she told him. She'll be fine. Fireheart watched the two cats cross the clearing and vanish into Yellowfang's den. You can trust Yellowfang. At the sound of the quiet meow, Fireheart turned to see Bluestar. She'll see Cinderpaw through this. The clan leader was sitting just outside the nursery, her tail wrapped neatly over her paws. In spite of all the turmoil of Silverstream's death and the discovery of Greystripe's illicit relationship, she looked as calm as ever. Bluestar, Fireheart meowed hesitantly. What will happen to Greystripe now? Will he be punished? Bluestar looked thoughtful. I can't answer that yet. Fireheart, she admitted. I need to discuss it with Tigerclaw and the other warriors. Greystripe couldn't help himself, Fireheart blurted out loyally. Not help himself when he betrayed his clan and the warrior code to be with Silverstream. Bluestar's eyes glinted, but her tone was not as angry as Fireheart would have expected. I promise you one thing, she added. I'll do nothing until the shock has died down. We need to consider the whole matter carefully. You're not really shocked, though, are you? Fireheart dared to ask. Had you guessed it was happening? He half expected Bluestar not to answer. She held him motionless for several heartbeats. with her penetrating blue gaze. There was wisdom in her eyes, he saw, and even pain. Yes, I suspected, she mewed at last. It's a leader's place to know things, and I'm not exactly blind at the gatherings. Then why didn't you stop it? I hoped Graystripe would remember his loyalty to his clan on his own, Bluestar replied. I knew that even he didn't. Something would happen to end it, sooner or later. I only wish it had not ended so tragically for both of them. Though I don't know how Graystripe would have coped with watching his own kits grow up in another clan. You understand about that, don't you? The words were out before Fireheart had a chance to think about what he was saying. It happened to you. Bluestar stiffened, and Fireheart flinched at the sudden blaze of anger in her eyes. Then she relaxed, and the anger was replaced by a distant look of memory and loss. You guessed, she murmured. I thought you might. Yes, Fireheart, Mistyfoot and Stonefur were once my kits. Chapter 23. Come, Bluestar ordered. She began to walk slowly across the camp toward her den, leaving Fireheart with no choice but to follow. Once inside, she told him to sit down and settled herself on her bedding. How much do you know? She asked Fireheart, her blue eyes searching. Only that Oakheart once brought 2 ThunderClan kits to RiverClan, Fireheart admitted. He told Greypool, that's the queen who suckled them, that he didn't know where they had come from. Bluestar nodded, her gaze softening. I knew Oakheart would stay loyal to me, she murmured. She raised her head. He was the kit's father, she added. Did you guess that much? Fireheart shook his head, but it made sense, then, that Oakheart had been so desperate for Greypool to care for the helpless kits. What exactly happened to your kits, he demanded, curiosity making him unguarded. Oakheart didn't steal them, did he? The clan leader's ears flicked impatiently. Of course not. Her eyes met Fireheart's, suddenly clouded with a pain he could not begin to imagine. No, he didn't steal them. I gave them away. Fireheart stared in disbelief. There was nothing he could do but wait for the she-cat to explain. My warrior name was Bluefur, she began. Like you, I wanted nothing more than to serve my clan. Oakheart and I met at a gathering early one leaf bear, when we were still young and foolish. We were not mates for long, when I discovered I was to have kits. I intended to bear them for ThunderClan. No cat asked me who the father was. If a queen does not wish to tell, that is her choice. But then, Fireheart prompted. Bluestar's eyes were fixed on a point far away, as if she were staring into the distant past. Then our clan deputy, Tawny Spots, decided to retire. I knew I had a good chance of being chosen to take his place. Our medicine cat had already told me that StarClan held a great destiny for me, but I also knew the clan would never take a queen nursing kits as deputy. So you gave them away. Fireheart could not keep the note of disbelief out of his voice. Couldn't you have waited until they had left the nursery? Surely you could have been made deputy once the kits were old enough to care for themselves. It wasn't an easy decision, Bluestar told him, her voice rough with pain. That was a bitter leaf bear. The clan was half-starved, and I had barely enough milk to feed my kits. I knew that in RiverClan they would be well cared for. In those days the river was full of fish, and RiverClan cats never went hungry. But to lose them, Fireheart blinked at the sharpness of pain he felt in sympathy. Fireheart, I don't need you to tell me how difficult my choice was. I lay awake for many nights, deciding what to do. What was best for the kits, what was best for me, and what was best for the clan. There must have been other warriors ready to be deputy. Fireheart was still struggling to accept that Bluestar had been so ambitious that she would have given away her own kits. Bluestar jerked her chin up defiantly. Oh yes, there was Thistleclaw. He was a fine warrior, strong and brave, but his answer to every problem was to fight. Should I have watched him be made deputy and then leader and let him force the clan into unnecessary wars? She shook her head sadly. He died as he lived, Fireheart, a few seasons before you came to join us, attacking a River Clan patrol on the border. Wild and arrogant to the last. I couldn't stand by and let him destroy my clan. Did you give the kids to Oakhart yourself? Yes, I spoke to him at a gathering, and he agreed to take them, so one night I crept out of the camp and took them to the Sunning Rocks. Oakhart was waiting, and he took the two of them across the river. 2 of them. Fireheart was startled. You mean there were more than 2? There were 3. Bluestar bowed her head. Her mew was scarcely audible. The 3rd kid was too weak to cope with the journey. He died with me by the river. What did you tell the rest of the clan? Fireheart thought, back to the gathering when Patchpelt had said only that Bluestar had lost her kits. I made it look as if they had been taken from the nursery by a fox or a badger. I tore a hole in the nursery wall just before I left, and when I came back, I said that I had been hunting and had left my kits sleeping safely. Her whole body trembled, and Fireheart could tell that confessing to this lie was causing Bluestar more pain than losing a life. Every cat searched, she went on, and I searched too, even though I knew there was no hope of finding them. The clan was devastated for me. She dropped her head onto her paws, forgetting for a moment that she was his leader. Fireheart crossed the floor of the den and gave Bluestar's ears a gentle lick. Once again he remembered his dream and the faceless queen who had faded away, leaving her kits to cry for her. He had thought the queen was Silverstream, but now he realized she was Bluestar as well. The dream had been both a prophecy and clan memory. Why are you sharing this with me? He asked. When Bluestar looked up, Fireheart could hardly bear to see the sorrow in her eyes. For many seasons I put the kits out of my mind, she answered. I became deputy and then leader, and my clan needed me. But lately, with the floods and the danger to River Clan, and your discoveries, Fireheart, making me hear again what I knew very well already, and now another pair of kits who are half River Clan, half Thunder Clan. Perhaps this time I can make better decisions. But why tell me? Fireheart repeated. Perhaps after so long, I want a cat to know the truth, meowed Bluestar with a slight frown. I think you of all cats might understand, Fireheart. Sometimes there are no right choices. But Fireheart was not sure that he understood at all. His mind was whirling. On one paw he could picture the young warrior, Bluefur, fiercely ambitious, determined to do the best for her clan, even if it meant unimaginable sacrifices. On the other, he saw a mother grieving for the kits she had abandoned so long ago, and what was probably more real to him than either, the gifted leader who had done what she felt was best and borne the pain of it alone. I won't tell another cat, he promised, realizing how much she must trust him to have revealed her secrets to him like this. Thank you, Fireheart, she replied. There are difficult times ahead of us. The clan doesn't need more trouble. She rose to her paws and stretched as if she had been curled up in a long sleep. Now I must speak to Tigerclaw, and you, Fireheart, had better go and find your friend. The sun was beginning to sink, turning the river into a ribbon of reflected fire as Fireheart returned to the Sunning Rocks. Greystripe crouched beside a patch of freshly turned earth at the top of the riverbank, his gaze fixed on the blazing water. I buried her on the shore, he whispered as Fireheart pouted up and sat down beside him. She loved this river. She loved this river. He raised his head to where the first stars of Silverpelt were beginning to appear. She hunts with StarClan now, he mewed softly. Someday I'll find her again and we'll be together. Fireheart was unable to speak. He pressed himself more closely to Greystripe's side, and the 2 cats crouched there in silence as the blood-red light faded. Where did you take the kits? Greystripe meowed at last. They should have been buried with her. Buried? Fireheart echoed. Greystripe, didn't you know? The kits are alive. Greystripe stared at him, jaws gaping, his golden eyes beginning to glow. They're alive? Silverstream's kits. My kits. Fireheart, where are they? In the ThunderClan nursery. Fireheart gave him a quick lick. Golden flowers suckling them. But she won't keep them, will she? Does she know they're silver streams? The whole clan knows, Fireheart told him reluctantly. Tiger Claw saw to that, but Goldenflower doesn't blame the kits, and neither does Blue Star. They'll be cared for, Graystripe. They really will. Graystripe scrambled to his paws, moving stiffly after his long vigil. He looked doubtfully at Fireheart as if he couldn't believe that ThunderClan would really accept the kids. I want to see them. Come on then, mewed Fireheart, feeling a surge of relief that his friend felt ready to face the clan again. Blue Star sent me to bring you home. He led the way through the darkening forest. Graystripe padded after him, but he kept casting glances back, as if he couldn't bear to leave Silverstream behind. He did not speak, and Fireheart let him be silent with his memories. When they reached the camp, the curious murmuring groups of warriors and apprentices had broken up, and everything looked normal for a warm new leaf evening. Brackenfur and Dustpelt crouched by the nettle patch, sharing a piece of fresh kill, and outside the apprentices' den, Thornpaw and Brightpaw were rolling around in a play fight, while Swiftpaw looked on. Tigerclaw and Blue Star were nowhere to be seen. Fireheart breathed a sigh of relief. He wanted Graystripe left alone, at least until he had visited the kits, without being troubled by blame or hostility from his fellow warriors. Then, on their way to the nursery, they passed Sandstorm. She halted abruptly, glancing from Fireheart to Graystripe and back again. Hi, Fireheart mewed, trying to sound as friendly as he always did. We're going to visit the kits. See you in the den later? You can, Sandstorm growled, with a glare at Graystripe. Just keep him away from me, that's all. She stalked off, her head and tail held high. Fireheart's heart sank. He remembered how hostile Sandstorm had been to him when he first joined the clan. It had taken her a long time to thaw towards him. How long would it be before she would treat Graystripe as a friend again? Graystripe flattened his ears against his head. She doesn't want me. No cat does. I do, Fireheart meowed, hoping he sounded sufficiently encouraging. Come on, let's go and see your kids. And that's where we will stop for the night. I hope you enjoyed listening, and I hope you had a good evening and a good night. Till next time, my friends.